right. We're back with another BPI podcast here. And today we got a special one. It's 2024 is coming to a close. And we're going to do a little year in review here. We got Zack Shapiro, head of policy, also the executive director of the Peer-to-Peer Rights Fund today. So we're going to go through some of that stuff too. And then we've got a new guest today. We got Stephen Pollock, senior vice president of operations here at BPI. And he's got some stuff to share with us today. So gonna jump right in. Thank you both for joining us.
Pleasure, Zach. Good to see you as always. Appreciate your massive contribution to the Bitcoin Policy Institute team, and happy holidays to you and yours.
Thank you. Likewise, great to be here, and quite a year to look back on.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump right in here. So, going to go to Stephen first here. If you had to choose just one single policy development that happened in 2024, what would it be?
Choose one. Man, it's been a great year. I don't think we can overstate how significant 2024 was for Bitcoin and specifically for the Bitcoin Policy Institute. It's been our best year yet. I would say, and Shapiro, I want to hear your thoughts, man. But I think all the talk on this strategic Bitcoin reserve probably has to take the cake. It's just such a landmark, idea and potential to sort of alter the trajectory of our industry moving forward. So that would be I think that most people would probably agree that would have to take the cake there. What do you guys think?
Interesting. I think in terms of like actual policy developments this year, and partly this answer is because of downstream effects, but the unexpected and somewhat grudging approval of the spot Bitcoin ETFs at the very beginning of the year, I think really ushered in a vibe change for Bitcoin that on the transition from being what is seen by most of society as an illegitimate asset, a gambling vehicle, a dark web currency, et cetera, to a legitimate part of the sort of financial firmament, and something that Wall Street can interface with, something that the government can interface with, and something that we might even be able to include on the United States balance sheet as part of an SBR going forward. I think that was a massive shift that we saw, that a lot of it can be tied to sort of that approval.
Pretty good. It's a strong number two.
Yeah, that's a tough one to choose between. I don't know if I'm going to pick a side here, but needless to say, it was a big year. And I think the other thing to sort of underscore here is the upcoming administration in 2025. I think we can't sort of walk past that one at all. We'll dig into that a little bit more. So, gonna go to Zach here, and maybe Stephen can weigh in if he wants. But on the peer-to-peer rights side of things, it's been a big year. I know this has been going on for a while, but it feels like we've kind of come to a climax here. Do you want to catch us up and highlight here?
Yeah, for sure. So the Peer-to-Peer Rights Fund is an initiative that we started out of BPI, out of a much darker story than you can tell about the SBR and the Bitcoin ETFs and everything. And it's been a little bit weird over the course of 2024 to see this split screen between Bitcoin, the asset, and Bitcoin, the network that is a freedom tool for people around the world. And Bitcoin, the asset, has, I think, undeniably, like we talked about, had an amazing year, a year that will probably be remembered as an inflection point. And it's basically just good news across the board. I think the picture is much more mixed, trending negative on the Bitcoin as freedom money side. Not to sell short the incredible effect I think Bitcoin is having as a safe haven for people around the world, people in Ukraine, people in the Middle East who don't have access to the traditional financial system. And there's incredible work being done by organizations like the Human Rights Foundation using Bitcoin as a means for freedom money. But there have been some very negative policy developments in the United States that I think really culminated in April of this year, where in I think it was a 1 week span, we both got the government write a reply brief in the Tornado Cash case, setting forth the argument that you do not need to be in custody of other people's funds in order to be deemed as a money transmitter, which for those of you keeping track at home, a money transmitter is someone who accepts and then transmits funds on behalf of the public. So somewhat mystifying how you could be a money transmitter without custodying other people's funds. And then in that same week, the Department of Justice brought a criminal case and did a midnight FBI raid against the founders of Samurai Wallet, which is a Bitcoin-based privacy tool. And it was that week and those two developments that led to the creation of the Peer-to-Peer Rights Fund and the recognition that one of the really important features of Bitcoin and technology built around Bitcoin is the fact that there is no intermediary in a Bitcoin transaction. It is peer-to-peer with only software in between. And while lawmakers and industry professionals, in traditional finance are starting to understand that and understand the implications of that, the courts seem to be a bit slower to understand that. And the courts and prosecutors can do a lot of damage on the sort of judicial side of things, aside from the executive and legislative branches of the government, if they don't take what Bitcoin is seriously, if they don't understand the peer-to-peer nature. And so the P2P Rights Fund is meant to intervene in court cases, really to help protect this principle of Bitcoin and non-custodial tools around Bitcoin are peer-to-peer assets and should be regulated as they are, meaning that not as if there is a financial intermediary between the two parties. We've had some good successes out of the P2P fund this year. We've raised a lot of money for the Samurai case. I think we've made a big difference there. I think we've done a good job getting the message out. We've done a good job rallying the industry around this being an important issue. And we had an important win in not we specifically, but the industry in a sanctions case around Tornado Cash, where a federal appeals court recognized that an immutable smart contract, so non-custodial code, is not property that can be sanctioned under the government's OFAC authority. But we've also had some pretty negative developments. Most notably the denial of a motion to dismiss in the Tornado Cash case, where a judge agreed with this, in my view, very damaging and wrong theory by the Department of Justice that you can be criminally liable for being an unlicensed money transmitter even without being in the custody of anybody else's funds. So I think there's a lot of work ahead of us there. I continue to think this is a really important cause, but it's a pretty stark contrast to what we're seeing on the sort of number go up, Bitcoin as an asset side of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good gut check for sure. I think, it's easy to kind of look ahead to 2025 and see all the progress we've made, but there's still plenty of battles that need to be fought. And we'll be releasing a report about the DOJ's dangerous new legal theory before the end of the year. And yeah, I think it's just a good thing to keep top of mind as we enter 2025 and we start thinking about what are our priorities with the new administration. So before we do that, I want to go back to Stephen here. How are we thinking about sort of public perception of Bitcoin? We can talk broadly about the public. We can get a little bit more narrow, think about sort of how policymakers are starting to come around to it. I think there's a lot to get into here, so I'll leave it to you.
Sure. I think that our role, let me just talk about BPI for a second, and from our perspective and from where I sit, um, you know, the best lobbyists, and we don't do a lot of lobbying at BPI, but the best, quote unquote lobbyists are teachers, in my opinion. So like educating, influencing elected officials, uh, I think educating them is always going to be the best method to do that. And so and so we found ourselves, especially in 2024, Zach, at the beginning of this year, we were BPI was a boutique nonprofit in a niche industry. And we've seen, because of, as Shapiro here pointed out, because the ETFs and so many things that were outside of our control, we've seen ourselves as an organization sort of be thrust into the center of a lot of public discourse and major political campaigns. Bitcoin's becoming a prominent, everything we already know, right? And so I think the nature of our work as an organization that exists to educate elected officials and to be a think tank and produce research, it's really sort of fundamentally transformed how we carry that out. Because a lot of people, I think tanks, and I've been kind of in this world for a long time. You think of think tanks, and it's like it's almost a it's almost not a it's almost a derogatory term, because you're like, oh, if you're a think tank, that means you might not do much, right? And what I've seen, and how BPI was designed to function from early on, I've seen that sort of come to fruition in 2024, because we have been like kind of at the tip of the spear of a lot of these, sort of contentious topics and ideas that are being primed for a new administration and or another administration that could have been, depending on how the votes ended up in November. And so, anyway, you know, when I think of educating elected officials, so I spend a lot of time in Nashville, around a lot of people who play a lot of music. I play music myself sometimes when I have time, and there's in Nashville there's songwriters and then there's musicians. And so it's the songwriter's job to like write a song. It's the artist's job to perform it and to turn it into a top 10 hit. And so I see, our work, I see BPI, like a lot of what we do is like songwriting. And then we go out and we find elected officials and they become all stars. They become, they write top 10 hits. And so it's it's kind of quiet work, and it's behind the scenes a lot of times, but I think it's some of the most important work that we could be doing personally.
Yeah, I like that metaphor. I think the songwriters don't always get the credit, but yeah, there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
And
All
one
right.
other thing, actually,
Yeah.
while I'm thinking of it, I wanted to talk. You were kind of talking about like 2024 year in review here. Before I know we're excited to talk about next year, and there's a lot to discuss. I think like a couple other things I'd want to plant a flag on for BPI is just, uh, you know, our ability, um, to sort of scale our summit this year. This was the second year that we did the Bitcoin Policy Summit in Washington, D.C. We did it in April. We're about to announce, hopefully before the end of the year or early next year, the dates for the 2025 Bitcoin Policy Summit. And this year, man, we had, I mean, you were there. It was on fire. We had over 500 attendees. We had, I think, 3 U.S. senators, 3 representatives speak. One of the elected officials, first time ever speaking publicly about Bitcoin, and instantly like came out of the gates as one of the like major advocates for the remainder of the calendar year. I think we had 500 people or more in attendance, a ton of staffers. It really didn't feel like an industry event. It felt like a DC Beltway event that just happened to be all about Bitcoin. And to me, that's a massive success. We know we can turn out for our own events. We know Bitcoiners will show up, and many of them did. And thank you guys for doing that. But I think the hallmark of like what made it a special event was that most of these people maybe have never been to a Bitcoin conference or um, summit before in their lives. This was how they came to learn and to be educated, and that takes a lot of humility, but it also takes people like Shapiro here, a lot of our fellows, a lot of our speakers. I think we had 60 some odd speakers, 7 of whom are human rights activists. So Zach, I don't know if you remember, man, we started the whole thing off. We had 3 stages. We started off at the main stage, and we went back to back to back with human rights activists from all over the world, telling their story to a room full of 3-letter agency officials and staffers and electeds who have never heard anything about that kind of use case for Bitcoin before in their lives. And so while the price is pumping and ETFs are going, I think the proudest moment for me was when I realized like nobody here mentioned the price of Bitcoin one time today. It was and it wasn't even intentional. It was just we're so focused, we're so on mission. And when I say we, it's really everyone else. Like I'm just the guy who does a podcast once in a while and make sure that, you know, the mail goes where it needs to be. But I'm just so proud of our fellows who've pumped so much into this thing for years and years now. I'm proud of Grant and David who thought up this crazy idea and, you know, kind of like cobbled it into a real organization. And I'm just proud to sit here as a part of this this movement of Bitcoiners that believes in our mission. And so, you know, we led with human rights activists because we think it's probably the most important message of any about Bitcoin is how it's helping people to survive and in situations where they otherwise may not. And the funny thing, one of my favorite stories from this past year, while we're talking about it, I had an opportunity to meet with the wife of a senior elected official. We were just at an event, and it kind of happened. I think her daughters or her sons or somebody are into, you know, Bitcoin or crypto, and she's like, I don't know anything about this. And we had a great conversation. And I think what really struck home was like I just mentioned, you know, there may be someone in your position, you know, middle class or for middle class in other countries that you can imagine a situation where uh, overnight their country is no longer the same as it was the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, you could use a country like Afghanistan as an example where there was sort of an overnight change in the reality for most of that population recently. And it happens every day, unfortunately. I'm sure Shapiro could probably list a country off every finger and toe this has happened to in the last few years. But you know, I just was explaining to her that one of the most powerful things you have to know about Bitcoin before you know anything else is that for the first time in world history, you can memorize some words. You can take your entire net worth anywhere in the world to a free country and retrieve it. And you don't lose everything you've ever worked for in your life. That's actually possible now. And I just saw the expression in her, you know, kind of like countenance change from what is this? What's with the special interest groups guy who's talking to me right now? You know, why are the staff to just like, oh my goodness. And then I had staffers coming up to me later that night saying, hey, what did you say? Because now I have to buy all these books and read them. So, yeah, it's been a great year, sort of at the 30,000 foot level, and then kind of down on the down on the ground level. And I'm never going to forget. I think many Bitcoiners will say I'll never forget this year, and I know every member of BPI will not forget it anytime soon.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. I think, you know, the other thing to think about as far as looking back at the Bitcoin Policy Summit is the participation that we had from both sides of the aisle. You know, I think one of our sort of like major indicators here at BPI is, you know, can we maintain Bitcoin as an issue, you know, being a very nonpartisan issue? There isn't necessarily like a ideological, you know, divide here. This is technology that's good for everyone. This is an American technology. And, you know, I think another sort of moment that stands out looking back is um, Representative Ro Khanna at the, you know, Bitcoin conference in Nashville, you know, sitting at the live desk and telling us, you know, Bitcoin is an American technology. Bitcoin is good for human rights. These are all issues that, you know, would apply to a more progressive ideology. These are ideas that, you know, look beautiful to, you know, your classic libertarian. You know, this is not a politically charged issue. This is something that's just good for America. And I feel like that's, you know, a message that really came through this year. And, you know, I think to a large extent, we played a big role in that by having, you know, folks from both sides of the aisle speaking at the Bitcoin Policy Summit. So not to
Right.
pat ourselves on the back there, but I think that was big.
No, no, Cohen, I agree with you, man. I think, you know, the gospel's for everyone. You know, we'll educate anyone who wants to learn about Bitcoin and what we think about the direction of our country with regards to policy. And anyone who says, "Hey, I've got this idea that you know would be good for freedom or financial freedom or whatever the case may be," and we say, "Well, like, hey, we happen to have written 1,000 pages about that," you know, we'll send them to you. Politics. I think I spent over a decade running political campaigns and lobbying and those sorts of things. One of my favorite things about BPI is we don't have to deal with that anymore. We can just, kind of roll up our sleeves and get to work. And we don't have to worry about, which side or which seat you're sitting in before we can work together. And so I think that's a feature, not a bug, of being a 501c3 nonprofit. And yeah, I think it's what's gotten us to this point and what's going to propel us forward in the future. I think it's a big part of it.
Zach, any thoughts on 2024 before we move to 2025?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I want to return to what I really think the sort of theme of 2024 is for Bitcoin and what this year will be remembered for, which is a pivotal moment in the transition from Bitcoin being seen as a legitimate asset for the first time. And I think that's really a through line through a lot of what we've talked about, obviously on the financial side, adoption by Wall Street, adoption by investors, inclusion in pension plans, that speaks for itself in terms of how Bitcoin seen as a legitimate asset there. I think what Stephen said about sort of the best lobbying or lobbying-like efforts being education is totally right. And I think the change that we've seen and BPI as a whole has been really effective in helping shepherd is education that Bitcoin, look, it's a real thing, right? It is something that you need to take seriously. It's not a crazy thing. It's not all about, moon boys and Lambos and stuff like that. Like, it's something that's worth taking seriously in policy, whether that's the type of geopolitical policy that we see Matt Pines write about, whether energy policy like Troy Cross writes about, whether it's foreign illicit finance questions. Bitcoin is an important topic that should be taken seriously. I think you can see that reflected in the summit this year, really, which felt like a professional event and had incredible people involved at all levels of government. And these important questions about human rights. And I think one of the reasons why BPI has taken such a leap forward this year, if you look at David and Grant's vision, what they did is they skated to where the puck was. I think the vision for BPI from the outset, even when it was a much smaller organization than it is now, is we're just going to take Bitcoin seriously, and we're going to try and teach people how to take Bitcoin seriously. And that's inherently nonpartisan. It's just, here's what it is, like, take it seriously. The people they surrounded themselves with are people that know how to talk about Bitcoin in a measured way. I think that's bought us a huge amount of goodwill and credibility and made BPI sort of one of the leading voices for people who, they hear about an issue related to Bitcoin, whether it's, a legislator or someone on their staff, and they just want to understand it. I think we've built up a lot of credibility to be the people that you go and ask about that type of stuff, because we're not out here just, as an industry trade group. We're not out here pushing sort of a traditional special interest. We're people that care about Bitcoin. We understand it really well. We think it's good for the world. And we're just out here to be a resource on that topic. And so, I think they've done a really good job of that, and it's paid off in spades, and really sort of shows this inflection point for Bitcoin moving into sort of the mainstream and into sort of perception of legitimacy.
I agree 1,000%. One other thing I want to add, because I know you're going to want to pivot here in a minute, with advocacy, that is, I don't think it's a secret, but I think it's rare, unfortunately. Maybe it's a secret. But I think that really has helped us, and I hope others who hear this either agree or do likewise, because I think it's just good for our industry. Like, whether you're a lobbyist or you're just a passionate advocate, or whatever the case might be, I think the tendency is to look out for your industry. I think that's fair. I think that's important. I think it also doesn't stop there. Just being a good educator is necessary, but not sufficient to being a great advocate. You need to be a trusted ally for the elected officials that you're working alongside. And so what that means is you aren't just thinking of your own industry's interest, but you're also looking out for the best interest of the elected official and staff that you're working alongside. And so what would be best for them? And so it's like a do unto others type of mentality, really. Like, when I'm not just here for myself. I'm here to help you, and I'm here to, like, make sure that whatever the case is, we never put our friends and allies in position to do or say or go out on a limb that would put them in a bad position. And I think that's just doing it right. But I think that I think it's essential, and I think that a lot of our team does a really good job of that, and not just BPI, but but BPI. So anyway, I wanted to add that on. Something I'm really proud of, I guess I would say.
Yeah, that's
In
great.
full disclosure, it's my job to be proud of BPI. I'm over development and making sure that the financial trains run on time. So it's sort of my job to be, a proud BPI. I kind of run the booster club around here. So
Biggest BPI fanboy. All right. All right. 2025. This is going to be a big year. Steven, we're gonna go to you first here. What's the biggest opportunity for Bitcoin in 2025? I have a feeling I know what you're gonna say, but go for it.
yeah, I already said it. I think I'll say something different then, because I've never been one to not surprise. I would say when Bitcoin, when our industry looks at the year ahead, many have said there's a window of opportunity here. I disagree. I think someone came over and kicked down a wall. There's it's wide open, and it's open season for our industry for the first time, instead of being open season on our industry. And it's so exciting. The limiting factor are no longer like, out there. The limiting factors for the industry are no longer like, kind of outside the gates. It's really, I guess you'd say, like, the limiting factor is rests on our ability to, like, clearly and confidently, well, just clearly articulate and defend what we would like to happen. That's what it seems like to me. And that's not necessarily easy, but I think that's where we're at. We need to be able to clearly articulate and then defend, academically or otherwise, like, what needs to happen next. And that's why I think it's essential that we have people like Zack Shapiro here on the team, that we have people like Grant and David Zell leading the team, that we have people like Matthew Pines now on the team, and many others that we're gearing up right now. And that's a tall order for us. I think that a lot of that is going to, when you're in a room full of people and they say, okay, this sounds like a great idea, this and this, like, I need a 100-page explanation of what this means and why. Everybody's going to look at us. And I don't think we take that lightly, but we'll take it. And I'm excited about the opportunity.
All right. I do want to talk about the SBR here. So just
okay.
gonna go.
And the strategic Bitcoin reserve. I mean, that's
Okay.
It's going to be a big piece.
This is going to be a big piece.
Maybe the piece.
The piece. I want to ask you, because I think, one sort of major conversation in 2024 has been this sort of nation state game theory element to this, right? There's this sort of feeling in the air that this is going to have to happen quickly if we, want to take advantage of this first mover advantage here. And this is something Matt Pines has talked about. But, you mentioned that, maybe there isn't sort of this like Goldilocks timing on these things. Do you feel like there is this urgency for a strategic Bitcoin reserve?
Yes, I think there is urgency. Again, not to be a broken record here, but on the geopolitical stage, Bitcoin is increasingly being seen as a real asset. People around the world are going to wake up to that. They're going to realize there's a finite amount of Bitcoin out there. They're going to realize that Bitcoin has a lot of the properties of gold, but it's like gold that you can send over email, and that's incredibly powerful. And it's like a treasury asset that can't be frozen by another country, and that the supply can't be controlled by another country, and countries are going to start to accumulate. And there is, I think, a huge first mover advantage if the United States were to be the country that takes that first really important step towards monetizing Bitcoin, right? Holding it, I think it's good for the country. I think symbolically it's really good. I think Bitcoin embodies Western and particularly American values of self-reliance and freedom and financial inclusion and equality. waiting for a country that maybe doesn't share our values to take that significant step before we do, I think would be a real error. So I think if nothing else, that creates a sense of urgency around the SBR.
Well said.
Yeah,
Stephen.
once the ball's rolling, you just got to go. I mean, and it is. I mean, it's only going to gain momentum. It's only going to get harder and more costly to wait. It seems like it's very early stage. It could be mid to late stage very quickly. And so as much upside as there is to being first out of the gate, there is a ton of downside to being fifth or 10th. Or I tweeted out the other day, like, there will be a country who's the last to do it. And so yeah, it's it's time. Green light.
Agreed. All right, cool. I had to get that in there somehow. All right, we're gonna start wrapping up here, and I want to go to Zack first. As we're looking at the P2P rights situation as we're going into 25, obviously, we got some stuff coming up. I know we have some stuff in December too, so I don't want to gloss over that. But what are we looking at? What's in front of us? And if you want to talk a little bit about how folks can get involved with P2P, feel free to do that here too.
Yeah. So look, the P2P Rights Fund is really focused on the courts and the judicial branch of government, and there the situation is tough. We had, like I mentioned, this win on the sanctions case, but on Monday we have the next hearing in this upcoming Monday, the next hearing in the Samurai Wallet case. There's going to be a trial in the Tornado Cash case that's likely to go to appeal, and in the courts things are in a tough position. Now, I think there are some significant opportunities for 2025 to move the ball forward. One of them potentially would be for the industry to bring affirmative litigation to try and codify in law through case law in the courts that you are not a money transmitter unless you're actually in possession of and transmitting money. What a crazy idea that would be. I think we may see some movement there in the next year. Outside of the courts, there are things that the Treasury Department could do that would be really helpful. I'm optimistic that the incoming Treasury Department under Scott Bessent will hear us out on this and can provide guidance both that clarifies when a non-custodial privacy tool like Tornado Cash or Samurai is or is not a money transmitter, but also other types of Bitcoin tools, eCash mints, the Lightning Network, Lightning routing nodes, Bitcoin miners. We should get clear guidance on this stuff that the industry can rely on, and that will provide a lot of protection and clarify things for federal judges that might not otherwise be super in the weeds on what the difference between a custodial and a non-custodial Bitcoin tool is. I think there are lots of other policy priorities that are important. Even out the P2P stuff is important, but we need to figure out from the SEC what it means to be a qualified custodian for someone that custodies Bitcoin. This is a real problem for people that, institutions, high net worth individuals that have trust structures that want to hold Bitcoin. There's just not clarity on who a QC is. And I'm optimistic that, Paul Atkins is going to be more helpful on that front than Gary Gensler's been. I'm hoping in the next year we'll see two-way in-kind redemption and creation for the Bitcoin ETFs. That'll help people who hold Bitcoin be able to get access to credit. Just like many other types of spot ETFs that allow that. I think we have a very good opportunity and shot to get rid of SAB 121, a sort of ridiculous and arbitrary rule that bars banks from custodying Bitcoin. I think there are incredible stuff that's going to come out of the industry. I mean, I'm incredibly inspired by what the eCash companies are doing. Fediment and Fedi and Cashew doing amazing work. We're going to have the first ever this month spot Bitcoin insurance product rollout from AnchorWatch. That's incredibly cool. We want to make sure that on the sort of policy front, we're supporting this type of innovation. I think 2025 is going to be an incredible year for Bitcoin. And one of the roles I'm excited to play at BPI is to help be the voice of the industry, of people who are building cool stuff to make sure that we get rid of barriers that are currently in their way. And then we replace those barriers with smart, reasonable policies that give them the groundwork to build on.
Zach, can I ask you a question real quick? Do you have to bounce right now? You got a second?
In a couple minutes, but yeah, I could.
Some of the stuff you just listed off, you list off a lot of things, but to those of us who aren't as involved in, how all this stuff works, when you think about, okay, there's a new administration, we get them sworn in, they start nominating, filling roles. How downstream do you see? I mean, I'm not saying like when is all of this going to happen, but like when can we reasonably expect to start seeing some of these changes actually occur? Are we talking this summer? Are we talking it's going to be a couple years? What's your best, kind of guess on some of that?
Yeah, I think there's a range. There are some things we might be able to see pretty quickly by executive order. There are some things that will need to go through policy rulemaking in the agencies that will take on the order of months. And then there are like actual bills, right? A comprehensive digital asset market structure bill, a stablecoin bill. If we're changing the BSA in any way, that's, to the extent that stuff happens, that's going to take longer. So it really depends what process you go through in the government. We're definitely working hard on draft executive orders. We're hoping that is the area we can move the most quickly. Frankly, the first thing that we're going to see as an industry is not a change in regulation or law itself. It's going to be a shift in law enforcement and regulators' priorities with regard to the industry. I think specifically when you're looking at the SEC, but I think this is also true. Like if you look at Operation Chokepoint 2.0 with the OCC, with FDIC, with the Treasury Department, we're going to go from an executive branch agency outlook that is just hostile to Bitcoin to one that is likely to look to be supportive. And so, if we're looking for what's going to happen first, other than President Trump's promise to free Ross on day one, I think the first stuff we're going to see is a change in priorities and perhaps just informal guidance or no action letters from regulators.
Just quickly before you jump, how can people find you? What's kind of the best thing for people to do?
Probably the easiest places to find me on Twitter. I'm Zack B. Shapiro, ZackBShapiro. I'm Coin Lawyer on Telegram, and you can find me on the BPI website or on my law firm's website if you're looking for legal services, rains.law, RAINS.
Okay, good. Just quickly for the viewers too. So Zack is also the executive director of the Peer-to-Peer Rights Fund, and they are also collecting donations. So if you're interested in supporting his work there, it's p2prights.org.
P2prights.org. And we're right. btcpolicy.org. You want to talk about that real quick?
Let's do that. Go for it.
Zack had sent me before, he wanted me to kind of cover how people can support BPI. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We're a charity. 100% of our budget is based on donations from viewers like you. And some of you guys have been unbelievably generous to us, and we appreciate it. I literally couldn't do it without you. So just the sort of passion, the fervor of this industry is mind-boggling, and we appreciate your belief in us. And we're always open to sit down and talk, and we have a kind of open door, open ear policy. Like we want to hear, and we want to kind of reflect your thoughts. And hey, we don't know everything. We got a lot of fellows, and they're all pretty darn smart. But there's things that we don't know. So we'd love to sit and talk. I would say also the cool thing about BPI, one of my favorite things, if I was, a donor or looking for into your giving, is that BPI is in a sweet spot. We're no longer a startup, kind of getting our feet under us, nonprofit. We're maturing as an organization, but we're not a legacy group. We're not a legacy organization that's been around for 20 years. I think we're in this great spot where donor dollars are being maximized. You're putting the most lead on target that you can. And, we're still lean and mean, and we are frugal, and but we fight and we claw, and I think we're incredibly effective and tactical at what we do. And so I think that's a really cool thing about BPI, especially right now, the last year, next few years is a really great time and an exciting time around the org. I think other things people can do. We have our summit we're going to announce before long. Attend that. We sell tickets to that to help raise money. We have sponsors that we need for that, especially if you're a company and you like BPI. We do bronze sponsorships. They're not that crazy to get in, and it really helps us a ton. Bronze and silver sponsors. We have a lot of returning gold sponsors and title sponsors and that sort of thing. But um, and then like, man, we accept Bitcoin. You can go on our website. You can donate Bitcoin. We only accept round numbers. It has to be a whole Bitcoin. No, I'm kidding. We'll take little little sats. Send me a few hundred sats. Um, we accept cash. Really enjoy recurring donations. They're super helpful. We kind of know what to expect over the course of a year. We can kind of budget around that. Um, and also, like we mentioned, give to P2P, and you can earmark exactly how much of that you want to go to certain legal defense, to a general fund, or whatnot. The other thing, I've had a call with a donor not that long ago who was really passionate about one specific thing and was like, "Hey, are you guys focusing on this?" I'm going to be honest with you, no. I'd love to. We just don't have the bandwidth. And they're like, "What if I helped, fund that?" And man, that was fantastic. It unlocked capabilities for us that we were able to do that we otherwise would not have. And so we have a laundry list of things we'd like to do. And so give me a call, shoot me an email, Pollock, SPOLLOCK at btcpolicy.org. Love to chat with you. And the other thing, just keep fighting a good fight. I mean, we're spoiled in this industry. It's sort of the dream world to run a nonprofit in, and you guys are, a lot of times you have to go around and kind of rally advocates, or sort of like create some sort of grassroots movement in your industry. Um, that's not a problem in Bitcoin, man. Um, and I've never seen anything like it, and I wouldn't change a thing. I love it. So thank you guys, and really appreciate it. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Uh, we love what we get to do. So thank you.
Well said. I think the other thing to add here is, if you're someone who maybe your sats are precious and you don't want to share, which is fair enough. You can also keep up with our work. So we've got a bunch of channels going. We've got a Twitter account, or x.com now. We got a podcast going here. We got a bunch of ways to keep up with us, and so those are also good ways to get involved.
We got a great newsletter. I mean, whoever's working on that guy, he's really crushed it this year. Yeah, good work on that, man. Yeah, our newsletter is a great way to kind of keep up with the heartbeat, cadence of BPI. We try to include things that are going on in DC that you may not have heard of if that's not your thing. But also, like, here's all the research we've come out with recently. Here's things that we have coming up on the horizon, maybe some op-eds, that sort of thing. Cohen here keeps it pretty punchy. So sign up for that if you haven't. And what else, Zach? Anything else we need to cover, man?
I don't think so. This has been great. I think, if you also, just to clarify here, if you are interested in signing up for the newsletter, you can do so on our website. It's kind of front and center, right on that main page, and just got to put your email in there. But yeah, I feel like the newsletter has been a great development for us this year. We starting to get a little more consistent with that, working on about a weekly basis now. And yeah.
End of year giving. I mean, we just kicked that off in the newsletter. It's a big deal for nonprofits. Obviously, tax write-offs. It's tax write-off season. We will help you with that tax write-off. I'm happy to help facilitate that. So give us a shout, man. We could really use the help. We're doing really well, I think, financially, but like, there's a few goals we're reaching for and we're sprinting at, and we could really use some help to get there. So let's do it. And with that, I think I'm out of here. Zach, thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be on the BPI webinar podcast, and thanks for having me, man. Good questions. Good stuff.
Yeah, this has been great. We're up to now, it's just been the webinars, which, they're sort of intended as policy webinars. They're sort of focused towards policy interests, and we're going to start branching out. 2025 is going to be a big year for us. We're gonna bring on some big guests. Not
Other
going to
big guests.
divulge other big guests. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been pretty focused till now. You said let's do an unfocused one. Let's have Pollock on.
Yeah. No, we're branching out. We're going in all directions here, and Stephen, this has been great.
Are you
I
having
really
Trump
appreciate
on
you.
next?
Who knows? Who knows? Could be. We will have a big guest before the end of the year. So if you've made it to this
It
point,
might be the president of the United States. Elon, are you having? It's Elon. Elon's coming.
Oh man, yeah. We'll come back at you soon. So thanks, Stephen, and yeah, it's been great. What a great year.
Thanks, man. Can't wait to meet you.
See you later,
Stephen. Bye.